Hello, I'm Tom McRae. This is the News Hour live from Doha. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, the United States asks the UN Security Council to vote on a temporary ceasefire in Gaza and says a major Israeli offensive in Rafah should not go ahead. Other countries will make submissions at the International Court of Justice about the legality of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory.
And I'm Nida Ibrahim in the occupied West Bank, where Palestinians say illegal Israeli settlements are killing any possibility for a two-state solution.
And Brazil and Israel recall their ambassadors in a growing diplomatic dispute over the war in Gaza. After the killing of 29,000 Palestinians in Gaza, Israel's ally, the United States, has called for a temporary ceasefire, quote, as soon as it is practical. Now, Washington has drafted a UN Security Council resolution supporting a temporary truce. It's already announced it plans to veto the text presented by Arab nations when the Council votes later on Tuesday. Now, America's rival resolution warns against Israel's planned ground offensive in Rafah, saying it will further displace Palestinians, potentially into neighbouring countries such as Egypt. From the UN headquarters in New York, here's Al Jazeera's diplomatic editor, James Bays.
Important developments here at the United Nations which show that perhaps US policy towards Gaza is beginning to change. For weeks, the US has been opposed to a draft resolution for the Security Council proposed by Algeria, which was due to be put to the vote on Tuesday, calling for an immediate ceasefire. But now, at the last minute, the US has proposed its own draft resolution, and it mentions the word ceasefire, not an immediate one, but what it says is a temporary ceasefire in Gaza as soon as practicable. And this US resolution also condemns the idea of a ground incursion by Israel into Rafah. It says that under the current circumstances, such an incursion should not proceed. The US Deputy Ambassador Robert Wood said they decided to put forward their own proposal because they believed the Algerian one was not going to make things better on the ground.
Look, we're very concerned about the overall situation there. I mean, it's getting worse every day, and we're very concerned about it, and we want to do something that can impact what's going on the ground. We just think the Algerian resolution isn't going to have that impact that we think is important, and that's why we're looking at other options to see what we can do from a practical standpoint to really make a difference on the ground.
So there are now two competing draft resolutions. What's the view of the UN Secretary General?
The Secretary General would like to see, first of all, on the ground, it's a humanitarian ceasefire, the immediate release of all hostages, increasing humanitarian access. He would like to see the Security Council speak with one voice on this issue, which has been challenging.
The new US draft resolution also rejects the idea of reducing the size of Gaza with the setting up of a buffer zone, and it condemns Israeli government ministers who've called for the resettlement of Gaza. What's not clear is how the rest of the Security Council are going to respond. More negotiations seem likely. James Bays, Al Jazeera at the United Nations.
Okay, let's talk to Hani Mahmoud, who is in Rafah in southern Gaza for us. And Hani, what's been the reaction there to the US draft resolution? Obviously the call for a temporary ceasefire, but as well as warning against a ground invasion into Rafah.
Yes, Tom. Well, any efforts that are leading to an end to war acts and the genocidal acts across the Gaza Strip are very, very welcomed by Gaza, and then particularly displaced populations, more than half the population in overcrowded Rafah city. And within the past, there was a repeated UN Council. I believe there were two of them, and then the ICJ ruling. But despite these calls for the end of the act of war, things on the ground haven't changed. In fact, we only seen a surge on the airstrikes and a more unprecedented humanitarian disaster is taking place here in Rafah or in the northern part of the city where a famine is actually happening right now. But the fact that this U.S. draft of resolution calling for a temporary ceasefire, it comes after the U.S. had vowed to veto a draft by Algeria calling for an immediate ceasefire. Now, the actual text it just falls short of the wishes of other members of the UN Security Council. Every other members wants an immediate ceasefire and an end to what's going on, but the U.S. is proposing a temporary ceasefire. For people here, it's a significant change in position of the U.S. foreign policy, and it reads for many Palestinians as well as the Israeli public that the U.S. now is joining the international community in calling for a ceasefire. It's definitely a change of position and change in the foreign policy. The U.S. has traditionally protected its ally from UN actions and has repeatedly resisted calls for these ceasefire. But as of now, there are growing pressure from the international community about the ongoing threats and moves by the Israeli military to expand the incursion into Rafah city, where more than half of the population have been squeezed here. The U.S. finds itself right now in a position where it had to voice its concerns in a more public way. Either ways, people here, they don't want more talks about it. They want actions happening on the ground. They want an end for this war, want an end for the ongoing misery caused by the unstoppable constant bombings of their residential homes, of public facilities, and the ongoing killing and maiming of their children.
Okay, thanks so much, Hani Mahmoud, for us in Rafah. Well, the UN's highest court is holding historic hearings into the legality of Israel's 56-year occupation of Palestinian land. Now, 52 states and 3 international organisations are providing testimony at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Lawyers representing Palestine presented their case on Monday, demanding an immediate end to the Israeli occupation. Now, representatives from 11 countries around the world will appear before the court in the coming hours. Our correspondents are covering all aspects of this story for us. Nita Ibrahim is joining us from in front of an illegal settlement in Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. Rory Challens is in occupied East Jerusalem. But first, let's go to The Hague, where Step Vassen is outside the International Court of Justice. And Step, can you just give us a rundown of what we can expect at the ICJ today?
A very full day here at the Peace Palace in The Hague, indeed. 11 countries will take the floor, and it's the biggest, the largest case we've ever seen here at the International Court of Justice, with 51 countries besides Palestine bringing their oral arguments in the next 6 days. So it kicked off all on Monday with the Palestinian high-level delegation accompanied by legal experts making a case about the unlawful occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem, calling it a colonial apartheid system. And also the foreign minister of Palestine said Israeli governments have only given us 3 choices over the years: displacement, subjugation, and death. Let's have a look at what was happening in court on Monday.
A Palestinian delegation accompanied by international law experts traveled to the UN's highest court in The Hague, taking the first step towards, they hope, stopping one of the world's longest and bloodiest occupations. For the first time in its history, the International Court of Justice will have to rule on the legality of Israel's confiscation of Palestinian land. Opening the oral hearings, the Palestinian foreign minister described Israel's occupation as a system of apartheid that has turned Palestinians into second-class citizens.
For over a century, the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination has been denied and violated. Palestine was not a land without a people. It was not. As Israeli leaders have described it, a wasteland. There was life on this land. The only solution consistent with international law is for this illegal occupation to come to an immediate, unconditional, and total end.
Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem in 1967, areas of historic Palestine, which Palestinians want for a state. Armed with maps, Malki showed the court how over the decades Israel has confiscated Palestinian land.
Israel wanted the geography of Palestine, but not its demography. So it kept pushing our people out of their homes, out of their land. Here is the fifth map. It was displayed by Israel's Prime Minister to the General Assembly last September. He called this the new Middle East. There is no Palestine at all on this map.
Paul Reichler, a U.S. lawyer who has regularly argued cases at the ICJ, said it's clear Israel has no intention to ever leave the land.
The evidence is overwhelming and leaves no room for serious dispute about Israel's actions or its intentions. In 2004, the court affirmed the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. In 2024, it is time for you to enable them, finally, to exercise that right.
This case is different to the one of Genocide South Africa filed. This one is brought by the UN General Assembly after passing a resolution with 87 votes in favor to give an advisory opinion on Israel's 57-year-long occupation. The hearings come at a time when the death toll of Israel's military operation in Gaza has surpassed 29,000.
Last month, the UN Highest Court ordered Israel to stop all potential genocidal acts in Gaza. Another decision by this court, although non-binding, to stop the unlawful occupation of Palestinian land will carry moral authority and will further increase international pressure on the government of Benjamin Netanyahu.
International legitimacy by countries is increasingly important in this intertwined world that we live in. And you wind up putting an adjective like genocidal or an adjective like illegal occupation beside Israel. It stains irreparably its own reputation, and it's bringing down the reputation of the United States along with it.
More than 50 countries will present submissions in the coming days. Step Fasten, Al Jazeera, The Hague.
In 2 hours, the proceedings will kick off with South Africa. And of course, we have seen South Africa here before, and a couple of weeks ago when they brought the genocide case against Israel on for its military operation in Gaza. Then we have the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, Belgium also speaking today, Canada, Algeria, and a lot more. And these teams are traveling with legal experts. Some of the countries have brought their ministers, others have brought their ambassadors, but it's going to be a long day for everyone here in court.
Indeed, we will be talking to you throughout the day there. Step Fasten for us at The Hague. Okay, let's head to occupied East Jerusalem now and speak to Rory Challens. And Rory, Israel has rejected ICJ rulings and its legitimacy in the past. What is Israel's take when it comes to this case?
Well, Israel's response to this, as it usually is with Palestinian entreaties to international bodies, is to say that this conflict is a political dispute between the Palestinians and the Israelis over disputed territory, and as such it should be settled between them by direct negotiations. And yet, Tom, for many more reasons that I can go into in the short time I have to talk to you right now, those direct negotiations have been dead for many, many years. Nevertheless, Israel says that the international court shouldn't participate in what it calls a media circus and should determine that the Palestinians return to those direct negotiations through the existing legal frameworks. The Israeli Foreign Ministry has said that the Palestinians are attempting a one-sided and improper legal process designed to adopt an extremist and distorted narrative according to which the Palestinians have no responsibilities and Israel has no rights, which has nothing to do with justice. But rights and justice are central to what the International Court of Justice has been hearing and will continue to hear over the course of this week. It has been hearing about Jewish settler expansion, not just in the West Bank, but also here in occupied East Jerusalem, even in the old city that you see behind me. It may well hear about the access rights that Palestinians from East Jerusalem have to holy sites such as Al-Aqsa down in the background. And that becomes more relevant as we head towards the holy month of Ramadan in just a few short weeks' time, with the Israeli government talking about how they might restrict the access of East Jerusalem Palestinians to